Hey everyone, welcome to episode 13. We made it to lucky number 13. And this week we are talking about some of the best life advice we've ever been given. So hopefully this is good advice for you too. All right, everybody, episode 13, lucky number 13. Do you think 13 is a lucky number or an unlucky number?
I'm an optimistic guy. I think it's going to be our best one yet.
Ooh, okay, I like that.
Yeah.
In general, though, how do you feel about 13?
I have no feelings.
You don't have strong feelings?
I'm completely emotionless about the number 13. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't excite me.
You know what? I don't know if this is still true, but I believe at one point a lot of hotels didn't have a 13th floor. Like you wouldn't have an elevator go to the 13th floor.
I've heard that.
I can't say that I've personally never stayed on a 13th floor. And I'll have to start looking at like the control panel in the elevators. Because I don't know if that's still a thing, but I think it was at one point.
Yeah.
Because nobody wanted to, an elevator's a particularly dangerous place to flirt with luck.
You think an elevator's scary. Imagine a podcast. And here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are
it.
with all the bravery in the world. We're like, bring it on. Number 13.
That's right. Let's do it.
Yeah.
By the way, have you ever had any kind of a uncomfortable experience in an elevator, or is that not really an issue?
Oh no, I don't tend to I'm not bragging, but I don't tend to have that type of fear or whatever. I've never.
Well, I'm just saying, have you ever had an incident like being stuck on an elevator or something like that?
No. There was a time before Hudson was verbal that he just got off an elevator.
Yes, that was terrifying.
And we couldn't get there, and so he just walked out and
that was scary.
I think you kind of went passionate mom mode. I want to say you got off the next stop and ran down the steps or something.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Tracked him down, but
when you've got a kid that can't say anything about what's going on, somebody asks him if he needs help, that's just pretty unnerving, he wouldn't even be able to ask for help, so that was pretty scary.
Yeah,
I've been stuck on an elevator once, actually, at a convention center. It stopped halfway between floors and the doors opened, and so we were able to get out. We had to wait till the elevator people came, and they were like, no, it's safe for you to get out, but we had to walk out of it, kind of climb out of the elevator a little bit.
I think I'd be doing a dive tuck type situation, because if you get stuck in the middle, that feels like
exactly. It does feel a little dicey, no pun intended.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
The word came to mind, and I immediately realized it might.
Just go with it.
Might be a lot. Okay, so. You all right?
Oh, yeah. I was a little down the wrong pipe there. But
all right. You've done that a couple times
13th
this week.
episode,
right?
Dude, you're going to have a few things go sideways.
That's fair.
You just got to be ready to go.
Okay.
If that's the worst.
We're
good.
We're all right. So a couple pop culture things. Scarlett Johansson. Have you heard about this whole thing with ChatGPT? Yes, you do know who she is.
No, ChatGPT what?
Yeah, so there was this whole thing where a company had asked to use her voice. They had asked her a couple times and she had said no. And then they went ahead and did it anyways. They basically AI generated her voice. I think it was for a song. Is that right? Yeah. So think of the way Alexa has a voice or Siri has a voice or whatever. They used her.
Wow.
And so she's suing them because, you can't just
I blame her, frankly.
Take a person's voice. I was curious your thoughts on that. You're someone whose voice is out in the world all the time, and especially I think in a very social media or, in her case, entertainment facing industry, your voice is a very important piece of what you do. Yeah. And so for someone to just take that, I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, right? So if they approached her and she said, I'm not comfortable with it, and they did it anyway. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly what's legal and what's not with all that. It feels like it would not be illegal to just take someone's voice. And I think AI obviously right now is coming on so fast.
It's the Wild West now.
So I think in some ways they're going to probably start,
getting
bringing laws and regulations around those things. But that is kind of scary, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And it's unnerving. I wouldn't want that. I don't think so. Because if you're like a voiceover specialist or that's kind of what you do, then
It's
fine.
your artistry. It's your bread and butter.
Yeah, but if you're like Scarlett Johansson, right, who's a personality in the world, and now you're taking her voice and you're making her say things she didn't say, and it's a pretty recognizable voice. I mean, obviously, a lot of people don't know who she is, but tons of people do.
I mean, she's done a lot of, obviously, aside from movies that she's in, she's done voiceover for movies as well. You know, Sing 1 and Sing 2 movies. Like I'm sure there's a ton more that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but yeah, her voice is a recognizable piece of her art, so to speak.
And so now you're going to take her voice and have her saying things that she didn't say.
Yeah.
It's one thing, again, if she signs up to say, hey, I'll read this script or I'll do this voiceover, but to just have that taken. And now, I mean, I think I would be extremely uncomfortable hearing my voice saying things I didn't say. And it's out in the world. And now people are confused as to, did you actually say that? Did you not? Now you have to spend your life responding to something
did or
that
didn't say.
Exactly. So I think, if I was her, especially in her position, I probably would go after them as well.
Personally, I appreciate her taking that on because I'm sure it is a big, ugly lawsuit that will probably take a little time and a lot of money. Excuse me.
Well, I remember seeing something where they were taking like musicians and artists, rappers, singers.
Right. People were playing around with it at the beginning, making Frank Sinatra sing something.
Yeah, and then people are thinking, well, and then you have living people who make a living doing this. And so now you're releasing a song by this artist that they didn't release.
Yep.
And so, again, now it's streaming or there's money being generated. And so, I mean, that goes to the heart of the artist, right? And what they're doing. And now you're just going to make something. You know, it's interesting. So last Sunday, I preached on Turning the Other Cheek. And a friend of mine who's very much into AI, he prompted AI with a few prompts from my sermon, and it spit back a song within seconds, in less than a minute, a full song on the sermon that I preached. And he sent it to me, he's like, hey, this is kind of crazy what AI can do and all this. And I was like, wow, okay. Like it was really well, I mean, I would say pretty well done. It was an interesting song. It was something that to an amateur like myself, I might hear and go, oh, that's a nice song. And so now looking through the lens of an actual artist, like someone who writes songs, for a living. And so now you're going to maybe write a song and then put someone's voice on it. Like I could definitely see how that would, as the artist, feel like very intrusive. And again, I don't exactly know how to regulate all that, but I could definitely, I do not blame her for that. And I think it's something, they're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, a lot of musicians have already gone to court over this kind of stuff. Artists in general, right? A lot of visual artists as well, who have had their work kind of ripped off by AI, basically mining the internet for images to create new things, and it's pulling from their art. So you already see a lot of this starting to come up, but I was going to say, I think what I appreciate about her bringing it up as well is, I think because she's such a high profile person, that I think it really will, and I'm not saying that some of the other people weren't, they were, but I think because hers is just her speaking voice, it's outside of like an artistic space, right? It's not where it's like, no, we're taking your name, image, likeness, your voice is part of your likeness. And so you're taking kind of the essence of who a person is, and you're taking it without their consent, and you're using it. And so I think that opens it up to the everyday person and starting to put some regulations around that, because the reality is that could really, you talked about it in your context. I think that could get ugly for a lot of people. Anyone could generate anyone else's voice if there are enough samples available of it, that you've recorded or that are online, whatever, and they can make you say horrible things if they wanted to try to destroy your career or, destroy relationships, whatever. And so I think it is important that we start putting some reins on this beast. I think that it has some amazing opportunities, but it can also be Pandora's box. if you don't learn to harness it correctly. More so than the internet ever was. I know everyone was like so freaked out about the internet and social media and that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's us sharing information with one another, human to human. This is like generating something that is the collective of all of us in a way, or generating something out of someone that already exists that they don't have control over. And I just think that's a whole different creature.
I think it undermines trust, right? So
Yeah.
obviously, like, you and I are in a marriage relationship. Like, technically it's the most intimate, connected relationship you can have. So trust, obviously people know that that's essential there. But when you think about trusting even someone who you're not maybe in proximity to, someone like Scarlett Johansson or somebody you may not even know, and yet you are interacting with them through content, the idea of trusting that person in some way, even though I don't know them, I don't see them behind the scenes, I don't live in the same house that they do, but to have a sense of trust. And so when you start being able to take someone's voice and make it say things that person never said, never came out of that person's brain, but it's coming out of their mouth, I think it starts to erode trust or like undermine it.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it's all going. I'm not the guy who's competent to speak on all that. But at some point, I mean, you wonder how many people are going to start pleading that, maybe whether they did or didn't say the thing. Maybe they said something and they're like, oh, no, it was AI. I don't know. A lot smarter people than me are trying to figure all that out right now. But I think, for someone like Scarlett Johansson, she's going, this is going to undermine the trust of people who have given me a voice in their lives in some way, whether it's through acting or just even in her personality. So now you've put a seed of doubt in their head as to when they hear my voice, is this really me or not? That's
right.
You know what's interesting? Just got me thinking about this. And by the way, if you want to pivot on the conversation, let me know. Go for it. I remember on the back end of COVID, when everybody started coming back, I was working out, and a guy from our church who I had not seen in a while because everything had been shut down and the gym had been shut down and they reopened it, and he came over and was talking to me, and he was like, hey, he's like, I want to thank you for, like, during the shutdown, like, he's like, I was really struggling mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, every way I was struggling. He's like, and Sundays, the fact that you guys like kept recording, he goes, he's like, even like just the sound of your voice brought me a lot of peace. Yeah. Which, number one, I appreciated. That was quite a compliment. Like, most people wouldn't necessarily say that, especially man to man. A lot of times men wouldn't say that. But it really got me thinking. Like, I was like, man, that's interesting, because that never factored into my mind. Like, I was really thinking about my messaging. I was thinking about what I wanted to say. But like, for him, he was like, man, there was something about the familiarity and the tone and my voice itself that did something to, for him, even beyond the things I was saying. Obviously, you want to do both, but like, you think about that. Like, there are certain people whose voices you have a reaction to. So there's something there. Yep. There's something there psychologically. So now you're going to take that and then put that in anyone's hands, or, to just be able to now taint that with whatever they feel like making your words, your voice say. That's right. That would tick me off, to be honest. I would fight on that one.
You think about the implications all the way down to like teenagers, right? And the fact that a teenager, if they had enough of a sample size of someone else's voice, they could potentially make something that passes off as maybe another kid in their class they don't like, and it's a recording of them saying something about someone else. Right. You could put words in there. I mean, you just, there are so many implications to it when you take away someone's control and of their autonomy in that way, that I think can get really ugly. So I'm glad she's taking that bull by the horns.
Go get him, Scarlett. Go get him.
ScarJo.
We got you. We got your back.
We're behind you. I don't know how, but we're in spirit,
dude,
behind you.
We are so behind you.
All right, last one.
They have no chance. I mean, the full.
I actually do.
The full weight of the Ford family. I mean, we got you, girl.
That's what'll tip the scale for sure.
Big time.
Last thing, It is the 8th anniversary of the loss of Harambe.
Get out. It's already been 8 years?
You don't even know who that is.
Harambe?
Yeah.
Can I guess?
Yep.
A gorilla.
Ooh.
Is it?
It is.
Are you serious?
Are you? Wow. Okay. Did you give him a hint?
No.
Were you over there mouthing it?
No.
I don't know. Were you like blinking in Morse code?
This is a real moment we just had.
I'm actually really proud of you.
It was the first thing that came to mind, and I was going to just keep guessing other things. It
just felt like a good, proud gorilla name.
When I said gorilla, I was simultaneously thinking about when that's wrong, what am I going to guess next? So this really, we just caught lightning in a bottle.
We need an applause sound effect right here.
Harambe the gorilla. Okay, what is this, the zoo situation where like somebody got over the wall? Was it like,
yeah, look at you.
In Asia? Was it in Asia?
No.
Oh, Cincinnati. That's right. And they had to put the gorilla down, right?
Right next to each other.
They chose to put the gorilla down.
They shot him right at the time because
he had the kid.
Yes.
In his hands.
Yes.
Wow.
So the kid had climbed into the enclosure.
Yeah.
Little boy.
Whoops.
And I don't think he was like actively hurting him, right? He wasn't hurting him. But it was like this could turn, right? You don't know what's going to happen. More than anything, it's the novelty of a thing for an animal like that. They have kind of the same, like that's the risk for zoo animals, period, right? They have the same experience all the time, and then even with enrichment, like it's the same types of things over and over and again in their life. It's very routine, and all of a sudden you introduce this very novel thing, this little kid, right? And so you don't know what their reaction is going to be just based on the fact that it's so different for them.
And you probably can't tranquilize an animal like that in a moment, right? Like if you hit it with a tranquilizer.
Yeah, I think that was
kind
kind of
the immediate.
I think that was kind of the controversy, was that it could, even a fast affecting tranquilizer, it's not instantaneous. It is at least going to take another
and the gorilla could react.
Right.
The
gorilla could also fall on top of the kid as it falls over. I mean, I guess that's what could happen when you shoot it too. I don't know. A lot of
talk about a bad day at the zoo for
horrible
everyone.
day.
Yeah.
And the outrage afterwards was massive.
Yeah.
Like the people people in general, the world over, were so angry that they put Harambe down, and they were also really angry with this kid and his family. So
I mean, that's an example of just a bad situation that
all the way
there's
around.
No good solution.
No.
A gorilla's got a kid in his hands, and okay, if you act decisively right now and you decide to put the gorilla down, okay, we don't know what would have happened, right? So you're gonna have people saying, well, if you just been patient with them, gorillas are, it would have given the kid up, but you don't know, right? So right. You have to make a quick split-second decision of which bad situation do I want to do, and in the face of uncertainty. I do not envy those who had to make those decisions.
No, I don't either. And in general, I think kind of the wildlife, community said they didn't have a choice. They did the right thing.
I mean, dude, if you're at the zoo, right? The folks at the zoo, their whole lives are about, if we assume the best, they're about loving these animals and wanting good things for them. I mean, again, I'm not trying to. I mean, somebody probably has, lots of people have a problem with the zoo or whatever, I guess. But my point is, nobody showed up that day wanting to do that. Mm-hmm. And if you hesitate and something bad happens, and then you go, why in the world did you hesitate? This was a primal beast animal. Yes, they have feelings, and yes, they're living creatures, but
it's an unpredictable
you hesitate
situation
every
for both
second.
Animal and child.
Man, that's awful.
Yeah,
why did you bring it up? Did you just want to talk about it?
It's the number one, just to see if you could come up with that, which I'm just floored. I'm clearly at a loss for words.
I am too. People are going to think that
was
we
staged. Set you up.
No,
it was not. It really was not.
Yeah.
I'm just super impressed. But also, it's the 8th anniversary, and a lot of people feel like, the world fell apart. Things really started getting bad after Harambe died, and they feel like this is our just desserts.
Okay.
For-
I have no
no
response
strong
for that.
feelings
Yeah.
one way or the other for that.
Yeah.
I think the bottom line on that situation is, for me, the lesson, the takeaway is no matter what, when it comes to animals and especially wild animals, if there are parameters set up, like be mindful of those. You know, it makes me think of that family at Disney World a few years ago that, you know, lost their son to an alligator.
Yeah.
And it was because they went down to the beach behind lines that had been set up and went and sat down at the water's edge. They thought there can't be anything in here. And it's like, no, it's marked off for a reason.
I
You
would
have
think,
to be
though,
careful.
I would think with that level of threat, gosh, you would think that the access would have to be near impossible. You know what I'm saying? You don't set up a stanchion when you have an alligator. You know,
I understand.
We're going to rope this off. Well,
So here's the thing. They patrol those waters. If you go there, you'll see there are boats. There's, you know, like guards on different entryways. They really do their best to keep them out of those waterways entirely and keep that area safe. So the fact that there was one there was already kind of an anomaly, right? They try to keep them out because they don't want them just coming up the beach and, you know, alligators going right past the stanchion either up onto the walkway. But the reality is anytime there's water somewhere in Florida, you can't be 100% sure. And so it was just really a series of unfortunate events there. I agree with you. I don't know if I'm assuming they probably put up more fencing since then.
I'm sure they did.
But I mean, I think they're just, you know, their other concern at the time, I think, was just appearances. They don't want anything at the happiest place on earth to seem like it could be dangerous and scary. And it's like, yeah, well, but it is, you know. So my point being, in situations where you are around animals, like if you've been given instructions and precautions and there are places you should go or shouldn't go, or if you go there, you should follow these very specific rules, do that because they're there for your safety and for the animals so that animals don't unfortunately end up having to be put down or you don't experience a horrible loss.
It reminds me of a story.
Tell me.
You and I were on a safari in South Africa.
Oh boy, I know exactly where you're going with this.
Kruger National Park.
Yeah.
Open air vehicle. Okay, so again, I was quite
unnerved.
Sober.
Greg was unnerved.
In my attitude about this because I'm like, how do you stop a lion or a snake from just coming in here and biting you and killing you?
The answer is you don't.
They're like, well, you know, basically stay in the vehicle, keep your arms in the vehicle, don't get out of the vehicle. The animals, they see it, they feel like it's a big animal, you know, and if you don't do anything weird, they'll pretty much just leave it alone, you know, whatever. We do this every day. Okay, cool. So we're driving, and after a while, you do start to get comfortable because you're like, even someone like me who tends to be a bit frightened of large animals, you're just like, oh, there's a giraffe, there's an elephant. I mean, they're everywhere. So we pull up, our driver pulls up and stops in the road, and there's a baboon probably 10 feet away, just sitting.
Large male baboon
sitting in the road, and open air, 10 feet away. And our driver is just kind of sitting there.
You get to see his teeth. People don't realize the mouth of teeth that a baboon has, the fangs that they have. Like,
as an amateur animal guy, that didn't look like a yawn to me. It looked like he was showing us his teeth, which again, in my, third grade education on animals.
I mean, regardless, the sight of those teeth
like
were
potentially a threatening gesture, right? So I'm like, I lean up to our driver to tell him, hey, the baboon's showing his teeth. I don't know what that means, but we might want to get going. And a guy in the back of the vehicle starts screaming and flailing around that this baboon's coming in the vehicle. So my adrenaline's through the roof. I turn around. I'm ready to go protect my bride.
Go toe to toe with a baboon.
I was ready to take on this baboon, and I whip around like ready to fight, and they all start laughing. And I was irate, dude, because I was like, "What are you doing? Like, we're in the bush.
Yeah, that was
this
very
is a
stupid.
this is a real baboon. This is not your
stupid.
little fun little friendly drive through the zoo. This is real life here. We're in South Africa. And so if you provoke this baboon to come jump in this vehicle because you're being an idiot, and now my wife and I are in danger. So I had a few choice words for this dude. And a warning. I fired a shot over the bow verbally.
Yeah.
If you pull that move when I'm in this vehicle again,
You won't be in the vehicle anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to feed you to the baboon. So we'll have a great meal today.
That was pretty dumb. I don't think our driver was particularly amused either.
Yeah.
I mean, it was,
It got real serious real fast.
Yeah, it was not wise.
Yeah.
That's just don't do that kind of stuff. It's just not smart. So, moving on to more fun topics. Let's talk about some of the best decisions that you have ever made when it comes to
Decision number 1, sitting across the table from me right now. Greatest decision of my life.
I really was not trying to set you up
I'd
for
make
that,
it
but
over and
I
over
appreciate
again,
it.
twice on Sunday,
All right.
every day. Okay.
Thank you very much. My self-confidence.
There's not even a close second.
You're very sweet. So moving on.
Big facts.
The best decisions you've ever made that, aside from me, that have helped make your life better, more organized, or just like overall more enjoyable, help you get the most out of life.
Okay.
And or some of the best advice you've ever gotten that has just contributed to the quality of your life.
Okay. So are you wanting this to be kind of a more granular type of conversation?
Honestly, whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
I had some kind of like very practical level things that were in my head to contribute, but I also want just whatever that sparks for you, because I'm not trying to narrow you down. You know what I mean? Your mind's a big, beautiful place. I want us to be able to explore all the corners of it and not get stuck because I put parameters on you.
You're so sweet. Okay, so how about we do both? Let's do maybe like kind of a big type of piece of advice or, something on a macro level, and then we'll go, like you said organizational and how you order your life and that type of thing.
Yeah, that was kind of some of the stuff that came to mind for me. Yeah. But again, your stuff doesn't have to be anywhere near that.
All right, so related to the greatest decision of my life, which was marrying you. True story. The day before we got married, we did our wedding rehearsal, and then we had a meal, and one of my best friends, his dad and mom and my dad and mom were sitting together, and I was just going around talking to everybody. And so my mom kind of took it upon herself to, try to basically get these people to give me advice, right? So she asked my friend's dad, "Hey, what advice do you have for Greg in marriage?" And he quoted like from the prayer of St. Francis, which is which I didn't know at the time was the prayer of St. Francis. I actually found out later, but he said, "Seek to understand more than seeking to be understood." Mm-hmm. And he said, basically with Shaylyn, okay, you're going to, like, he's like, I know you well, and you're going to consistently have the impulse to try to make her understand you. You're going to have that need to do that. He's like, discipline yourself to work harder to understand her and where she's coming from than trying to make her understand you. And I think there's a place for both. At some point, you have to communicate in a way that person can understand you. And I think feeling compelled to do so and to get better and better and better at that is important. But I think if you're trying to do that, I think at whatever effort that you're making to help that person understand you, you should make even more effort. Mm-hmm. We'll make up 20% more. Okay, work 20% harder to understand them and where they're coming from. So I never forgot that. I found out later it was from the prayer of St. Francis, seeking to understand instead of seeking to be understood. But I think that's some of the best advice I've ever had, and I've certainly done my best to apply that to our marriage.
You've
I
done
haven't
a great job of that.
I haven't always hit it out of the park. I would say, there have been plenty of times where I got lost in my need for you to understand me and where I was coming from.
It's human nature. I've certainly done that plenty myself.
But I've come back to it a lot. And then I really do work pretty hard to do that.
You do.
In general with
Definitely.
people. To get, where is this person coming from?
That's actually what I was just going to say, is I feel like you do a good job of that with people in general, not just with me, that you really do try to get inside other people's head, and see through their eyes and understand their view on a situation instead of just, trying to get someone to see things your way or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they're coming from a perspective or they've come to a conclusion very different from the one I've come to. Like, if we're looking at the same thing and seeing the opposite, instead of me just trying to force them to see what I'm seeing, my default position is to really get curious about how they came to that conclusion. How can the two of us look at the same thing and see something totally different? And so, not that me looking through that lens, like I'm able to fully see what they see, but I try pretty hard to do that. And it doesn't even mean I'm going to flip-flop in my position, but it definitely helps me, I think, particularly if it's somebody who I'm doing life with. It tends to, I think, help us to be able to work things out or find more understanding. I think it's also, frankly, helped me over the years to be able to forgive and let things go a little more, because I'm not, because I've worked pretty hard to understand why they did what they did. So
I definitely think that helps.
How about you? What's some of the best advice you've been given?
I guess I wasn't, for my contribution, I hadn't really thought of some of the best advice I'd ever been given.
Well, take it wherever you want it to go. Kind of same thing you intended for me.
Yeah. So one of the things that came to mind for me on this was actually something that we've done as an organization for the church, and then that we actually applied to the way that we think about our calendar, which is to look at the year in 3 seasons versus 4 quarters. Which at first, when that was first brought up to me, I was like, this feels so weird. But then once we start breaking it down, it's like, gosh, this is incredibly practical. And I think for a family, especially if you've got school-age kids, just makes a little bit more sense for your year. So instead of it being 4 quarters, where it's January, February, March, April, May, you've extended it. And so now it kind of is like the beginning of the year till the beginning of summer is pretty much how it's laid out. And then, do you want to take and apply how it's applied to the church, and then I can talk about how it's applied to our family?
Yeah. So I think this was something we implemented several years back, but really trying to get our organization organized and really breaking it down to 4 months at a time. And so we do a lot of goal setting within that. So whether a quantitative or qualitative goal. So, hey, we want to get to this number of folks who are engaged in community or people that are serving. We have different percentages and metrics that we kind of say, hey, for our church to be healthy and not just a place where people come gather to hear a message and they leave, but they're actually being supported. That means this percentage of people of our weekend attendance, we want to help them find community in some way, or to be serving and ultimately working within the ministries of the church, so that we have the infrastructure to support it, right? So within that means we have to goal set. And so sometimes it's quantitative and sometimes it's qualitative. It's like, hey, this team's really tired, or, we want our people that serve, we want them to feel the love. We want them to not just feel like we care about the fact that they could come make coffee or hold the door or play a guitar or whatever. We want them to know that they matter. And so we're going to do some things that are going to be hard to measure, but we're going to do them. And we are going to pay attention to the environment and how it feels, how the culture feels. So each team, each department will goal set. They, within that season, 1, 2, or 3 goals. They're accountable for that. They report on that. And then in that 4th month, we really do a lot of evaluation. So it's in season 1, okay, that would be April. And we have, end of Season 1 is Easter. So we kind of set some of the goals that kind of lead up to Easter to make sure that, we have kind of this SMART goal, right? It's measurable, time bound, all this kind of stuff. And then in that fourth month, they'll really evaluate, hey, how did we do with our goal? Did we hit it? Did we not? Do we need to double down on this goal? Do we need to work on something else? What's the next level? And then they, again, hit the reset. Season 2, which is May, June, July, August, which again hits the summer, same type thing. So we kind of will shift gears. We do we have contracts and things. We'll do those in those, a season at a time. And we'll try things a season at a time. Hey, let's shift our work schedule for that season. I've got some things I'm going to change in terms of some of my work rhythms and schedule. And so when I was talking to the people that report to me, I said, hey, I'm going to do this for season 2 and 3, and I'm going to evaluate and see where we're at. So it kind of gives you that smaller amount of time. So even our budget, we do an annual budget that's for the whole fiscal year, but we reevaluate it every 4 months. Every season we'll look and go, how are we doing? Because what's a budget is somewhat of a guess about how we think it's going to go. And we come back and we look and we go, do we need to tweak it? Do we need to, do more or less here or there? And so it just, that's how we've organized ourselves. But then you and I said, hey, let's build our whole lives around this.
Right.
Let's organize our family.
Yeah.
Whether it's trips we're taking, vacations we're taking, even things that we're doing, as a family in terms of, hey, let's try, whether it's getting help with this babysitter or, we look at those a season at a time. We just kind of step back and evaluate. Otherwise, for years we didn't do that, and you just kind of get sucked into life. And all of a sudden 2-3 years went by. You're like, oh man, you're just making it, right? What do they say? As you get older, the days get longer, the years get shorter. So if you don't have a system of evaluating your life quantitatively, qualitatively, what do we need to do? Have these important conversations. Then often you look up and years are gone.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to have you talk about the organizational side of it, of using it in that capacity, is because I think obviously some businesses have no choice but to operate on quarters, because of the type of work that they do. But I think for a lot of businesses, this is actually a helpful model for them to consider. And I think just you kind of bringing up and highlighting what it allows you to do is really important. For a family, I think it's great because it kind of follows the natural flow of your calendar, right? So January, February, March, April, you're kind of getting your year started. You're getting through all the major spring events and heading towards summer. It's towards the end of the school year. Then May, June, July, August, it's you've got your family's summer. You've got the end of school, back to school as kind of the big bookends for it. And then September, October, November, December, you've got all your holidays bookending that one. So it kind of flows the natural rhythm that you tend to take anyways. And so I think it's just a lot easier to organize around. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about only having 3 segments to organize instead of 4. You could have all the same things in it, but there's something about it being broken up into those 3 pieces. It just feels a little more manageable. It feels like one less ball in the air, even if it's really not. Somehow mentally it is. And because it does flow the natural flow of your calendar, it's like, all right, what is the one big thing in season 1 what are our big holidays? What are our big school events? What's our one big goal for this season as a family? What's the trip that we want to take or some special thing we want to do together? And you kind of pick one that fits well with each season. To me, it just feels a lot simpler. And it is interesting to me how much simpler, because again, when I first heard of it, it was like, well, it's the same calendar. It doesn't make that much difference, but it does. Once you start sitting down and playing with it on paper, I think you'll find how much of a difference it makes for you. So I thought that one was really good. As far as best advice I've ever been given, actually some of the best advice I've ever given was really specific to one of our kids, but I think it applies on a grander scale, so I'll go ahead and share it. When Hudson was first diagnosed with autism, one of the ladies that was part of his diagnosis process, she said, you need to imagine his brain like a hallway full of doors. and you have this giant set of keys. It's 50 keys on this ring. And you just have to keep going down the hall, door by door, and try all the keys in each door. And eventually you will figure out what opens what. Everything is in those rooms that needs to be there for him to have a wonderful life. You just have to figure out what unlocks what door. For most people, all their doors are already unlocked. You can freely walk in and out of those rooms. But for him, a lot of his doors are locked, and we have to figure out what's the key. And that was incredibly helpful for me. Number one, just to have a visual that helped me kind of have a better understanding of how his brain works, because I do think that's pretty accurate. But it also was really helpful in increasing my patience, because it's like, all right, it's going to take time to try a bunch of keys in a bunch of doors and work my way up and down this hallway. And it's, it's okay that we're hitting milestones at a different pace. It's okay that you try a bunch of things and they don't work. It helps release some of that feeling of like, I'm such a failure, nothing I'm doing is working. Well, no, that was just the first 30 keys, and it might be number 33. And so it really, really helped me to start having better perspective, more patience, and also like just a healthier acceptance of the situation, But my point with that is that I actually think it's really helpful for all of us in every area of life. The more I applied that, the more I started recognizing, like, throughout our entire lives, there will be things that you go, I wish I would have realized that at 20. I wish I would have realized, and it's like, no, those were doors you hadn't opened yet. And so it's okay that there are certain things that over the course of your life, you're going to keep learning and unlearning and shifting and exploring new parts of your own heart, mind, soul, exploring other parts of life, and to have patience with that process as well, and not get super frustrated with yourself that it took you till 40, to realize a certain thing. It's like, no, man, at least you realized it at 40, not 80. You got decades more, God willing, with this new realization in your life that's going to help you. And so instead of like getting so hung up on time lost, because I think that's our natural reaction to things, right? Is we go, oh no, if I had known sooner, it could have been this. Don't worry about that. It is what it is. And you don't know what would have actually been different if you had known that. You know now. So what are you going to do with this information now that's going to change the next 20 years of your life? And that's a very hopeful thing instead. And so it's been a very healthy reframe for me.
I think that's a great point you brought up. And I think probably it would be easy in someone's head to go, hey, if I'm learning something at age 40 that most people would have learned at age 20 or something like that, right? I have some kind of delay in my learning, mm-hmm. right? And maybe it's like a life lesson, right? And it took me this long to figure it out, and now you're getting your feet under you. We'll call it 20 years late. Mm-hmm. To be discouraged by the fact that you think, well, now here I am 40 and I'm where I should have been at 20. But that's not the same, because you learn the lesson at 40. You also have 20 more years of life experience.
That's exactly it.
To take it. And so in some ways you have the ability, you're in a position to take kind of a quantum leap maybe that you couldn't at 20, because you have all these other factors.
Yep. A richer understanding of the lesson.
We kind of saw it with Hudson, right? Because he had major speech delays.
Yeah.
So we tried to get him talking, but they said, hey, if you do some physical stuff, it'll open up the verbal. So we did the trampoline thing, and he started talking more and all that kind of thing. But once it's been interesting in this last year, because once some things click for him, and the school he's at unlocked some doors.
For sure.
He went from antisocial mm-hmm. to hypersocial.
Now you have to rein him in
overnight, right? Like in a way that a 12-year-old extrovert would do, right?
Right.
So if he had started talking and was able to talk 6 years ago the way he does now, I don't think it would be like it is. It's not like he's starting.
It wouldn't have
back
manifested the same way.
It opened up,
yes.
And so now,
such a great point.
And again, he has autism, so it's a little bit different. We're kind of talking between
right, but the
neurotypical
point
and
remains.
kids that aren't, or people that aren't. But
Yeah.
but I think that's the lie, right? At 40 years old, 50 years old, you're going, I'm so delayed. Basically, I'm like a 20-year-old. No, you're like, it clicked as a 50-year-old, and there's a lot of it. You're going to take, you're going to jump years at a time,
That's
essentially,
right.
because you have all these other things.
All
going
the
as
life
well.
experience that's shoring up that new lesson. I love that, and I think that is absolutely the point to be taken. And this idea that somehow like it's too late, or that time was wasted. I don't think any time spent living and learning is ever wasted.
And I think how that would show up, right? Let's say you have painful insecurity, right? You are really, let's just say it's plagued you, and it's been something that's been debilitating, and maybe it had to do with big T or little T trauma, whatever it is. For whatever reason, I'm 40 years old, I'm 50 years old, and I still in many ways am like a self-conscious teenager. Mm-hmm. And so you have some kind of breakthrough, right? You go, you get help, you talk it out, you work it out, you pray it out, you're able to see things, you're able to learn things, and so you're able to come to a better place. Okay, so you're 50 years old, and you coped with it for a long time. It undermined your potential for a long time, and now, between God and a counselor and a bunch of hard work, you got these breakthroughs. You had these revelations, and you're like, oh my goodness. So here it is. Well, okay, so you're going to be sitting there at 50, and you're going to go, man, what if I would have had this happen at 20? I would have taken a different career path. I would have made different relational decisions. I probably wouldn't have hooked up with that person or that person. I was doing it because I was insecure and I was trying right? So like you have all these decisions that you're like, this last 20, 30 years, I've made a bunch of decisions because of insecurity. Now I can't go back in time and be 20 again. So that's where it can be demoralizing. Right. You're 50 years old and you're like, man, this just hit me now. And so I think if I could say something to that person, I would encourage them that, like, yes, of course you can't get in a time machine and go back and make yourself secure at 20. And you can certainly get caught up thinking about what if and woulda, coulda, shoulda. But like, don't think that you're not starting from that same place. You're in a totally different place now. Mm-hmm. And so your life isn't wasted. Yeah, you don't have the 30 years back, but there are some things that could happen for you even exponentially in where you're at now.
Right.
You've come to it now. Yes, all of us would have liked to learn the lesson earlier. Mm-hmm. But I think to just kind of look at the 30-year math and say, this is what it cost me. Don't short sell what God can do with a revelation that took 30 years too long. Mm-hmm. Don't sell yourself short, and don't sell God short of what he can still do with your life, even if you learn the lesson what feels like way too late.
Yep.
And there's some things that can fast forward. There's some things that can come together in a unique way in that season.
That's right.
And so I think, that degree of hope, I get why people would feel that way. I have those. I mean, I come to things all the time that I look back, I'm like, man, I wish I could go get some of those sermons back. I wish I could get some of those decisions back. But I think you go, it is what it is. We're all where we are.
Nobody starts at the finish line.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to cut you off.
No,
I was just adding to it. I'm sorry.
No, I've made my point.
Yeah. I think the other thing that people miss in that sometimes is just the inherent gift of being a disciplined thinker. So in order for you to come to a lot of new realizations over time, it means you had to do some work. That's right. Mentally, emotionally, whatever, to come to this new realization. And the muscle that you develop that leads to those revelations is in and of itself a gift, right? To have the capacity to discipline your mind, to think through things on a whole other level, a deeper level. That was something recently, you had sent me a clip from a 60 Minutes interview with the Pope, and I'm not trying to make any sort of statements about anything religious or the stands that he took during that interview. That's not the point. But it was really fascinating to me that this man is in his 80s, right? Mm-hmm. And he is continuing to be a disciplined thinker that approaches topics with a fresh mind and really searches scripture, searches his own heart, talks to people to help him come to conclusions. And I thought, man, that is actually a very admirable quality, whether you come to the same conclusion as him on things or not. Because most people, by the time they've hit their 80s, they're incredibly set in the way that they think about everything. And so to have the discipline to go, I am actually going to approach all kinds of things in my life with an open mind. I'm going to make sure that I continue to look at them with the eyes of a learner, and not that I already have all the answers, but always look at life as there's always something more for me to learn. That's an incredible lesson and a real gift, I think, that will lead you to really beautiful places in your life.
Well, we've talked about this as a church before. I've talked about it in messages and things about really seeing the value in sitting in the tension between tradition and conserving things and protecting things, and then also making progress and changing things. So we know, like, there are a few certainties in life. One of them is change.
Right.
It's inevitable, right?
Yep.
Like there's nothing that's like the one constant is change. So we know change happens. It needs to happen. But also we don't want to just change things because we're bored with them, or change things because they're unpopular or whatever it might be, right? So having, like, to use your term, disciplined thinking, to be able to sit in that tension and to see it as valuable. Oftentimes, tradition and progress are pitted against one another. Yeah. And so it's like, if I just want to protect everything and preserve everything, everybody that's trying to make progress is the evil villain in the movie, and vice versa. That's right. If I'm trying to make progress, everybody that's trying to protect everything is just trying to maintain the status quo, or they are stuck in the way of progress. Yeah. And so I think the best way to think about it is a value for sitting in the middle of the tension, always asking the question and trying to, essentially drain yourself of your presuppositions of even your own flesh. Like, well, maybe I'm wanting to hold on to this tradition, not because it's good, but because it has a nostalgic element for me that soothes me. Now I'm actually being selfish and holding on to it. It may not be that we need to hold on to it. It just feels good to me and my friends. Yep. And that takes a lot of disciplined thinking to be able to step back and go, is this really sacred? Yep. Or is it just nostalgic? It does. And so I think, that was one of the things we were looking at, like kind of tipping the cap, whether or not we agree with the decisions that are made by him or anybody, but to be in your 80s and to be able to step back and to kind of like do your best to have a fresh set of eyes and to go, hey, are we just doing this because we've always done it this way? And if so, is it time to keep doing this or not? I mean, again, you see that in Jesus' work and what he does. We've been looking at the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard it said this, but I say this. What is he doing? He's giving them something that, when he says, I came to fulfill the law, not abolish the law, he's saying, don't get it twisted. What I'm saying to you is going to sound like I'm coming up with something new, but this is not new. I'm actually power washing it down to its purest essence. That's right. This is what God always wanted us to do. This is how God always wanted us to think. This is how God always intended for us to interpret the law and have our hearts transformed. And so he's coming back to really, again, revealing the mind of God. Yep. But to everybody sitting there, they're like, well, but that's actually progressive to the traditions we've come up with. And again, they ultimately kill him for it. But my point is that sort of being able to sit in the tension, you have to see that as valuable. It would be a mistake for us to pick all tradition or all progress. Right. We have to ask that question. We have to keep asking that question.
It's a tension to be managed, not a problem to be solved. I think the other thing about that, and I'm really glad that you brought up Jesus' approach to it, because I think I want anyone who listens to this podcast to understand where we come from. You won't often hear us making statements about what we think you should believe. You're not going to hear the two of us like making hard statements about political topics or religious, things that people have often asked us to take a specific stand on. And we're not going to do that. And the reason is we care more about being like Jesus. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus didn't come and spend all of his time telling people exactly what to think. He spent a lot of time arming them with tools on how to think, how to approach a topic, how to deal with the inherent nuance in life. And so I am by no means comparing us to Jesus. We have a long way to go before we reach that level. But what I am saying is I think it is much, much more important for people to understand how to think about hard things than it is for someone to sit behind a microphone and just tell you what you should think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's good.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to this? I mean, this is one that you could, I feel like, go on for like 6 episodes on just good solid life advice, but we can put some of that aside for another day.
No, I'm good.
It feels like enough. This felt like lucky number 13. This was good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, hun, once again, thank you. By the way, I don't think I actually said it in return earlier because I was too busy blushing, but you are also the best decision I ever made, hands down.
Thank you.
That's how you close an episode.